Good morning. You are here for your Tuesday Tea-ology, and I hope this finds you well, that your week is off to a good start. Uh, we've been enjoying some really balmy, unseasonable spring-like weather up here in what is supposed to be the great frozen north. I take credit. I brought it with me up from the central Midwest. But nonetheless, it is cool enough to enjoy a good cup of tea. Um, Today I have an afternoon Darjeeling by Taylor's of Harrogate. And they of course make great claims for their Darjeeling. We buy we only buy the finest Darjeeling tea during the peak harvest in the second flush season. I don't know what that means, but they say it's a good Darjeeling. Now it's afternoon Darjeeling tea, and I'm drinking this. It's just about 10 in the morning. But here's a secret that we tea aficionados know, and I share with you that you can drink it anytime you want. You can have your afternoon tea in the morning. You can have your English breakfast tea in the afternoon. It's really the Wild West, the world of teas. So indulge as you please. But what shall we say about the afternoon Darjeeling? I'm gonna say it's a serviceable black tea. It's perfectly good, but it's unremarkable. It doesn't sit up there with the Irish breakfast and the English breakfast and such. There's nothing so special about its flavor. A serviceable black tea. Throw it into your variety for occasions. There you go. Yeah. But now on to more important things. We have been talking about the work of Jesus Christ, and we're at that climactic work of his death and resurrection. And we're still, though, trying to draw a somewhat broad view to get the big picture. So talking about his passion, the events immediately leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus. And last time we deviated a little, but the week before we talked about the Last Supper. And so, kind of transitioning from the Last Supper towards the arrest of Christ, we have his time on the Mount of Olives, um, the Garden of Gethsemane, and that time of prayer, the final moments before his arrest. And it's a time where we find a number of things in that space between the Last Supper and the arrest. Um, and so before going across to the Mount of Olives, we had his demonstration of love, washing the disciples' feet, um, and his demonstration that he knew that he was going to be betrayed, and even who the traitor was, reminding us that Jesus walked into this with eyes open, indeed with the foreknowledge, for he was the Son of God. Um, what we also find is that he knew the denial that Peter was going to give. And so we have the predictions of Peter's denial that shows that Jesus was perfectly aware not only that one of his disciples would betray him, but that another, and this one of the big three in essence, who kind of were pulled out from the group, Peter, would deny even knowing him in his place of suffering. And Peter, of course, doesn't believe it. He thinks he's much stronger than he is. That's often the case with us. We think we're much stronger than we are. But the Lord tells him that he's going to deny him 3 times before the rooster crows. And we have different gospels. See, we have these 4 gospels, and and it's a wonderful work of God's providence that we do. And different gospels sometimes one will will remember for us one thing, and one will remember for us another thing, and they're not contradictory, but they are different, and so we get a fuller picture when we see all four, but we also want to take each one in its whole, because each one is a single work, as it were. Um, so when it comes to the Gospel of John, we have extensive time then showing Jesus teaching his disciples about salvation, about the wonderful truth of union with Christ that he gives in the image of the vine and the branches. I am the vine, you are the branches, and instructing them on what's going to happen, on the coming of the Holy Spirit, and the high priestly prayer where he prays for them and for us. And the power of that is recognizing when it happens that it is on the night as he's about to be betrayed and go and suffer the cross that he prays for us. There's the strength of the Almighty. And other Gospels, Matthew and 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 Luke here, um, give attention to the intensity of Jesus' prayer. That he goes to the Mount of Olives, and Matthew tells us about how Jesus he was off praying in the intensity of knowing what was to happen, and the disciples kept falling asleep, and Mark has that same thing, that Jesus goes to Gethsemane, and he has them sit and pray, and he takes Peter and James and John, so the big three, a little, and he speaks to them, um, and then he is praying, and he comes back, and they're falling asleep, and this happened three times. um, and Luke mentions just one, but the emphasis on the weight of this, that Jesus knows what he is about to do, and in contrast, the disciples, they can't even keep awake. uh, and look at the intensity here. uh, Jesus withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and knelt down and prayed, saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. So there's the intensity of Christ's prayer, one of the last events before his arrest. Um, what do we make of the Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me, but not my will, but yours be done? On the one hand, it shows us that the real uh, awful intensity of what Jesus was about to do, that that he um, that he recognizes the terrible trial that he is about to embrace. Uh, and this matter of not my will but yours be done um, points us to the two natures of Christ. So we got to dig back into our Christology, our doctrine of Christ. Uh, that being fully God, he had the divine nature and therefore the divine will. But being fully man, he had a human nature and therefore also a human will. And so, in essence, he is praying out of his humanity to God the Father, and putting his human will in submission to the divine will. Now, is that complicated and hard to conceive? Absolutely. But again, I think it was theologian Robert Culver who said something to the effect of, we can't imagine what it's like to be God, therefore we can't imagine what it's like to be God and man. So, uh, but we observe and we recognize these two natures of Christ uh, at work. But I think what especially we take from this is one more reminder of that theme of the obedience of Christ that is so central in his atoning work. Throughout his earthly life, he lived the righteous life that you and I have failed to live. He gave the perfect obedience that the essence of our sin is our unwillingness to give that perfect obedience to God. And so even here at the end, approaching the cross, he is saying, not my will, but yours be done. And um, that is a pattern for believers. Now it is different, of course, because we don't have a divine nature. We only have the one will, but that pattern of submission to the will of God. That we are called to pray. We are called to pray earnestly, and we see in Jesus here an example of earnest prayer. We are called to pray for we what we desire, not out of selfishness, but out of good desires and such. To pray for people's healing, to pray for people to come to know the Lord, to pray for our needs and desires. And we're to pray earnestly and to know that prayer is powerful. But but the prayer that is truly spiritual comes brings the request to God with faith, but comes with, but not my will, but yours be done, because we know that that is what is best in all things is God's will. And Jesus knows the plan and what he's going to do. We see the seriousness of it here, uh, uh, but we also see the perfection of obedience that makes a model for us and is a part of his work in making up for us and making a way for us. And so the the strength and love of Christ is continually on display through these events of the Passion. He is in control of the situation. He knows what is to happen. He is approaching this trial, yes, praying for himself, but also praying for us and going forward fully knowingly. By contrast, the disciples are confused, are weak. They're not as strong as they think they are, and they're falling asleep. They're on the job. We shouldn't think that we would have done any better. And on the whole, it is a reminder of the sufficiency of Christ, his work for us, and only his work for us, can be relied on to make us right with God. Well, may the Lord bless you. May reminders of the depth of God's love be a blessing to you and strengthen you as you go through your week. Bye bye.